let me ask you a question, and be honest.
Who?
Do I make you horny?
Randy?
Do I make you horny, baby? Yeah, do I?
Hello and welcome then, fellow hunters, as today we talk Diablos, the demon of the desert, or as many new hunters know him. While a stern test he may be, a sterner monster still he is. Let's be honest, Diablos is simply cool. From one of the most impressive pairs of horns, just full stop, to one of the most recognizable, yet irritating, long-lasting roars in the game. And a raw physical strength that honestly puts him in the upper echelons of all creatures. He is hardy, he is direct, filled with a single-minded fury to reduce you and everything you've ever loved to a red paste strewn across the dunes. There is nothing fancy going on here. Elementless, plain, and straightforward. Ferocious, yet simple. There is an undeniable, almost eloquent beauty to just how Diablos goes about his business. No fuss, just corpses littered behind him, battered, broken, and bloody. Their eyes then are heavy set underneath their horns. This restricts their peripheral vision more and more as the horns grow, but this matters little to the Diablos because it's only really interested in what's straight ahead of it. Able to charge at unreal, terrifying speeds that shouldn't be reachable for a creature with such bulk, for a creature coated in such heavy set scale akin to granite, a creature whose tail, acting as a sweeping club, would crush a boulder if it simply dropped upon it. A creature whom is so densely packed with muscle, whom is so heavy that their own wings cannot support anything approaching sustained flight, able to at best wobble through the air in short bursts. Primarily the wings are used to help pull itself free if it should find itself stuck within the earth. But despite all this, the onslaught remains. One of the most deadly charges in all of Monster Hunter. The horns able to penetrate deep into stone at the force of impact, the horns denser by far and sharpened to a razor point, capable of puncturing even the most well-fashioned armor. Facing down this mighty creature's relentless advance is one of the hardest tests a hunter can face, and one, if they should pass, results in them being granted a wheelbarrow, the function of which is to help carry their massive balls. Diablos not great at turning, slow when a straight line is not involved, but these are traits that seldom work against it. Very few creatures rival it. Elder dragons, of course, things like Deviljho and Rajang, but they are an apex for a reason, though predator they are not, for they are the most powerful herbivore to be found.
What the fuck?
Well, okay, arguably the most powerful herbivore to be found. Feeding primarily on cacti, it is able to sustain itself on relatively very little matter. His ridged jaw and tusks designed to scrape away would-be spines, lest they get lodged in his throat and mouth before devouring the sweet cactus flesh, now defenseless. Diablos is at home with sand and loose dirt underfoot, enabling him to exploit his most impressive trait. He can sink underground all too easily via combination of his powerful legs and shovel-like Triceratops-esque horn and frill combination, and once beneath the cool earth, the most potent weapon in his arsenal is unlocked. A weapon I think we all know all too well. It is a steep challenge to defend against an attack that you can't see coming. Steeper still then, an attack that not only can you not see coming, it strikes from underneath. The belly of most animals, its weakest point, and the Diablos knows this all too well. Bursting from below, with enough force to penetrate horns leading the toughest armor and hides. In the blink of an eye, well, blood drip, drip, slowly falls to the floor after a brief journey down the horns, and a lifeless form goes limp atop the head of this mighty beast, as life escapes from its eyes. But more than this savagery, the Diablos underground can move from place to place with incredible precision and speed, enabling it to claim and defend violently a vast wasteland kingdom. They are incredibly sensitive to both sound and vibrations, able to detect the slightest hint of an intruder from nothing more than the steps they are taking. The Diablos then will leave the epicenter of its home, likely an underground cavern, and head directly to the poor unfortunate soul. It will then, with every ounce of violence it can muster, go about dismantling and destroying this daring invader. For a Diablos is proud, if nothing else, both of its boiling empire and the weapons featured so prominently atop his head. See, for a Diablos, the larger both land and horn under its control get, the more likely it is to attract a mate. A Diablos would quite simply rather die than lose either. It is perhaps the greatest insult one can deal to this majestic wyvern, is to remove its horns, yet leave it alive. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, guys, it's kind of fucked up whenever you go on a horn run.
Are we the baddies?
As a quick aside, I think it's bloody right brilliant that long ago in the early games we get this lovely ecology video, seeing the Diablos face off over a little bit of an argument over who gets what cactus, and now we have essentially a better rendition happening in-game right before our eyes. Is that not such a poignant reminder of just how far this beautiful series has come? Now, technically a Diablos can grow their horns back, it just takes a bloody long time, and in that time, well, the likelihood is they will starve or be killed by the Diablos that immediately comes in to rob everything they hold dear, mate included. And, of course, the sensitivity to sound, vibrations, and the like, while incredibly key in its survival, can be used against it, something hunters have been doing since time immemorial. Sudden violent shock of sound, well, overloads its senses and causes a Diablos to, let's say, freak the fuck out. But This can also happen naturally when the likes of the Noyos let out their curdling cry. This can trick a Diablos into surfacing, ready for a good scrap, only to find nothing there at all. So ultimately Diablos is just raw, focused power, and he pulls it off exceptionally. From a design that has been popular since its inception to this day, and a fight that is admittedly brutal, but undeniably fair. A phenomenal learning point for any new hunter is their first Diablos wall. What starts out as seemingly unstoppable turns into a beautiful dance of timing, dodge, and retaliation that is oh so satisfying the first time you nail it. He is, for all intents and purposes, a bullfight, and that is something that I can really get behind. So, the Black Diablos then, one of the more interesting subspecies I feel, because unlike the others, it is essentially still just a normal Diablos. It's not a permanent change, it's not brought about by living in a different environment, as usually is the case. It's simply a Diablos female that is in heat. And look, it's at this point I need to talk directly to a very few morons that are currently typing a comment.
Diablos can be both male and female. They are a normal species, and no, it is nothing to do with monoblos, you fucking ding-dongs.
Thank you. Really, this is aimed at a tiny minority. The most of you are lovely people, and I could not ask for a better set of viewers. Now, this is a concept I'm particularly fond of. Outside of it being wholly unique, it simply reminds me of my lovely little bearded dragon every time I fight one. So, a bearded dragon then, when it's upset or stressed or angry, its beard, its belly, its scales will darken and eventually turn black to show how it's feeling. So I always just get that imagery when I see a Black Diablos, and because of that, completely buy this drastic change. And because they are, well, in heat, they're a little bit agitated. They are. They fight essentially everything that moves, and really one of the hardest challenges for a male Diablos is taming a female in heat so that they may propagate. This usually results in one titanic clash, where should he win, he proves himself worthy and the female accedes, or should he lose, well, she fucking kills him. So, you gotta ask yourself, as a Diablos,
do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
So, translated into your actual hunt then, she's a lot faster, she's a lot stronger, she has a little bit more of an edge to her attack patterns, able to readjust charges, able to combo much more effectively. Her burrow strike is much further reaching and has all sorts of lovely, delicious alterations on timing. She really is just Diablos tuned up to 11 for one final "are you actually good at fighting Diablos" challenge, and that's something I can actually appreciate. Her as a subspecies doesn't drastically alter the fight. It's not like a fire to ice element swap. She is simply a better Diablos, building on what you've learnt fighting him, and now adapting to her enhancement. A lot of the time, we've just changed the colour and it's a bit stronger, it's kinda lame, but through both combination of, well, the lore of it, and how it actually translates to a learning mechanical and challenging experience, I think it might be one of the best pairs, just full stop. So, then, of course, there is one more Diablos to talk about, the deviant, the Bloodbath Diablos. Now, this is a Diablos very simply that when it was young, it kinda got its horns decimated by a hunter and lost a fight quite handily. And as we know now, that is not not a good time for a Diablos. But this one, rather than give up, decided it needed to get even. And not just even with the hunter that dealt it this hurtful blow, no, even with essentially existence itself, becoming the most violent creature, well, arguably, full stop. And to achieve its new goal of really killing everything that moves, it decided to go on a little bit of a training montage. It did 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and ran 10 kilometers a day. And thus it was ready. And by the time it was ready, its horns had grown back in, but not as they should. One grotesquely large, the other split into 3. A reminder permanently of what was once done to it. And what I mostly love about this deviant is it's not the result of mutation or something random or environmental or, you know, the usual freak kind of results. It's essentially a Diablos that has reached its potential via working very fucking hard and practicing fighting and killing and learning and going above and beyond. He's essentially a prodigy Diablos who got kick-started by a traumatic fight while it was still but young. So now it is coated in the blood of its enemies. Remembering its trauma, it can get so angry that its internal temperature rises high enough to cause the life force coating it to evaporate explosively in great gouts of scalding steam. It is really terrifying, and is the most powerful deviant by far, and more powerful even still than many elder dragons. Bloodbath Diablos is bad news. So, Monoblos then. This one is kinda curious, because Monoblos is almost redundant. A single spiral horn, and a beak, and a spiked crest, and, well, the tail's a bit spikier, and look, it's slightly different shaped Diablos. And I'm gonna say, as I begin this little bit here, I kinda do prefer the single horn setup. I prefer the beak look. I do kind of, for the most part, prefer how it looks. However, it is essentially a Diablos clone. It even has a subspecies white Monoblos, which is a female Monoblos in heat, and it digs, it charges, it tail sweeps. It's just Diablos, right? There are subtle differences, of course there are, but there's nothing so noteworthy it's worth me really even talking about. So look, I don't want this section to be so tiny, but it really, I cannot stress enough how, for all intents and purposes, they are the same. They really are. It comes down to simply which one you prefer on an aesthetic level. The most notable contrast being that its frill lights up red as the blood vessels within get pumped full when it's a little bit angry. But there you go, guys. That's your horned wyverns, and that's what you need to know about them. Let me know if doing a monster, or at least partially, that is in world is still kind of cool for this, because obviously I feel like King of the Skies, Rathalos himself, should get one at some point, but I don't know, I've always felt it was kind of weird to do that, but maybe I'm just being a little bit silly. Hopefully you had a grand old time, and I will see you soon. Like if you enjoyed this, subscribe for more. Oh, goodbye.
Rage Gaming with the video float.
But that's all that's really relevant at the mo, but I'm still gonna leave this up so you patrons know that I love you even though the outro's no longer that kinda relevant. But the new one's being worked on and it's gonna be a truly badass song, and don't worry, I won't be doing any rapping on it. I'm gonna go now. This was shit.